Owala just released their FreeSip Sway tumbler, so I ordered one to test it out. After using it and looking over every little detail, I counted 12 notable changes, including some that are obvious and others you wouldn't notice unless you tried both bottles. So let's dive right in and find out what's different, including what's better, what's worse, and if it's worth an upgrade. This is Bottle Pro, and I promote health through hydration by helping you find the best bottles and by learning about hydration in general. If you're new to the channel, welcome. First, let's do a quick recap and introduction to their original bottle because not everyone watching this video will be familiar with it. Skip ahead to this point in the video if you only want to see our analysis about the new Sway tumbler. The reason why people love this bottle is primarily because of the FreeSip lid. It's marketed as a combination chug and straw spout, so you can take a sip or a larger swig depending on how much water you need. But the main reason why I like that chug opening is because it acts like a wide open vent for the straw. You know how with other straw lids, there's often a really small vent hole that restricts the airflow, and that makes it so you have to suck harder and sometimes it makes weird noises? Well, that's not a problem with Owala's design. It's much easier to sip from compared to most traditional straw lids with those flip-up spouts. There are also two other reasons why this fixed straw design can be better. Number one is that flip-up spouts are often notoriously difficult to clean around because there's always a seal under the spout that's hard to get to. You usually have to pop out the spout, which can lead to damage over time. Some straw lids like Hydro Flask's Flex Straw and Stanley's new Pro Tour lid have either removable seals or a removable spout that makes them easier to clean, but Owala avoids this problem altogether by having a fixed spout. This makes it easier to clean all the surfaces that come into contact with water. Most flip-up spouts don't cover the surface where your mouth comes into contact with the spout, so that area is much more likely to get dirty throughout the day. Owala's lid has a cover that goes over the spout, and this keeps it clean. Now that's a lot of good things to say about Owala's original bottle, but it did come with some drawbacks. It has triple layer insulation, but I tested it against all the other bottles in my collection and it was honestly pretty average. So while it's good enough insulation for most people most days, that's not usually a reason to choose Owala over other dual wall vacuum insulated bottles. Also, the handle is pretty small and it's not as comfortable compared to other great top mounted handles like Takea, Yeti, and Hydro Flask. I personally don't care a lot about the color combinations, but on the other hand, a ton of people love them. Either way though, this factor is pretty polarizing depending on who you ask. And perhaps the biggest drawback that I didn't mention in my original review video is that Owala's FreeSip bottle seems to have some issues with long-term durability. The lid relies on a few small springs, including for the button and for flipping open the spout cover. These springs and the area around the handle and the hinge are the most likely places that the bottle will break, which is something that I've noticed from comments from you guys and on reviews. I've personally noticed that the spout cover sometimes gets stuck on mine, and when I press the button, the cover doesn't flip open as easily as it used to, and sometimes needs an extra nudge. Despite these negatives, this bottle is honestly really good, and I used it a lot in 2024. Searching Google Trends for phrases like Owala bottle, Stanley tumbler, and Yeti bottle shows this clear trend. The term Owala bottle actually overtook the term Stanley tumbler in early 2024, so that shows you how big of a deal it was. So enough with the recap, let's look at their new Sway tumbler to see how it compares. First, let's look at these 6 main similarities. Both have Owala's FreeSip spout, which is still the main draw. They each also have a spout cover that flips open when you push a button on the front. Both have a powder coating that's durable to prevent scratches, and technically both bottles are dishwasher safe, though Owala recommends hand washing them to prevent cosmetic damages. Both have dual wall vacuum insulation, and they're also both recommended for only cold or room temperature water, not hot water, carbonated beverages, or perishable drinks. Though it's worth noting that the wording that Owala uses for the warnings like for hot drinks makes it sound like it's more of a liability reason, and it's just a CYA kind of lawyer statement to protect the company if pressure were to build up and it burned someone. Aside from those similarities, almost everything else about these bottles is different, and I counted 12 notable changes. Right away, the biggest and most obvious change directly fixes one of the most common complaints with Owala's original FreeSip bottle, and that's the handle. The original only fits 2 fingers realistically, and it wasn't very comfortable. But this new handle is a full hand grip, and it feels a lot better. It still rotates out of the way too, so it's not nearly as cumbersome as a tumbler with a large side-mounted handle. This change alone makes Owala's FreeSip Sway a much better fit for hiking and longer walks. And if you like the way that the old handle doubled as a lock to keep the lid from accidentally opening, don't worry. Sway Sway also has a lock, but now it's controlled by moving this toggle on the back side of the lid. Honestly, this seems like a good change because now you can use the handle or clip it to a bag while the lid is still locked. Another big change is the reason why this is technically a tumbler and not a bottle, because it comes with a tapered base. So if you're looking to stay hydrated on the road, Sway is probably a better choice because odds are it will fit in your cup holder. Most of the other 9 changes are smaller, but they're still noticeable. The mouth opening was increased from about 2.5 inches to 3.2 inches, which makes it easier to clean and add ice. Though honestly, you'll still probably want a bottle brush kit with either one, especially one like this that has a straw cleaner and a small detailing brush. I'll leave a link to this one that I've been using for a few years in the description. Another difference is with the threads. The old version had external threads on the bottle, while the new one has internal threads. What this means practically is that the new version is easier to deep clean because the seal between the lid and the bottle is on the outside of the lid instead of up in this recessed area. It's just easier to get to, and anything that makes these kind of large bottles easier to clean is usually a good thing. Owala also redesigned the seal for the spout. It looks better and more refined, and it's a little easier to get it to close. The original design was a little easier to pull out, but it's not really a big deal. Both are easy to remove. The new design also only takes a half turn to close as opposed to a full turn like you had with the original. That makes it a little easier to use, but it's not a big deal overall. Maybe the smallest change that could grow on you the most relates to these small springs. Remember how I mentioned my original Owala had started not flipping open as reliably? Well, it looks like Owala may have tried to fix this because the springs now have 6 rotations on either side instead of just 4. This makes it feel like it flips open more reliably. The button also feels a little less wobbly, like it's been fine-tuned a bit. The combination of changes with the seal design and the springs and the button are all things you probably wouldn't notice unless you had the 2 bottles side by side, but after sitting here and opening and closing each one for longer than I'd like to admit, it really does seem like these 3 changes make the lid feel better with how it works, and hopefully it will be better in the long term by making it more durable. They also designed a flat surface on 2 sides of the bottle, which line up with how your hand grabs it when you take a sip. This little change gives it a little different look and makes it a tiny bit easier to grab, but again, it's not a major change, but it is noticeable. Ironically, the new Sway tumbler that I have holds 30 ounces, while the older bottle holds 32, but the new Sway is significantly heavier and bulkier. But I will say the better handle and the cup holder friendly design still make this an easier bottle to get around with. And last is the insulation. I did our standardized hot water insulation test where I used these wireless thermometers to record exactly how long it takes the water to drop from 165 to 150 degrees Fahrenheit. Then I switched the thermometers and run a second test, and after averaging the results, it looks like Owala's new Sway tumbler has about 16% worse insulation than the original FreeSip. Most of this is probably due to the fact that it's a wider mouth opening, and most of the heat transfer happens through the lid. As a general rule of thumb, the wider the lid, the worse the insulation. When you add up all of these changes, honestly, they're almost all improvements, or at worst the same or not a big deal. The insulation in the new Sway bottle is significantly worse, but Owalas in general aren't known for exceptional insulation anyways. So if that's a primary decision factor for you, other brands might be better. Also, Sway is bulkier and heavier, but the big handle and cup holder friendly design more than make up for it. Everything else is honestly pretty good, so for my money, if I were to buy one Owala today, I would go with the Sway tumbler instead of the FreeSip bottle. It just seems like Owala really listened to the feedback from customers and made some good design choices that improve the overall product. Let me know in the comments if I missed any other similarities or differences, and if you'd like to see a recap of more bottle options before you buy, here's a video where I compared over 30 brands. Hope this helps, and happy hydrating.